Here is actually a sign of how desperate they are. Because here's one thing to take away from this past weekend. Here's another thing that I tweeted out and something that we can kind of take away from this weekend. So check this out. Today, Bernie Sanders drew 35,000 plus in LA. This was yesterday, by the way. I tweeted this yesterday. And I didn't get to go to that, by the way, because I had a show. I had a little gig. By the way, shout out to everyone who was in San Francisco this weekend. We had an amazing time up in San Francisco. Thanks to everyone that came out to the show. Thanks to Shahid Buttar for being there and saying a few words at the top. Thank you to PM Press, one of my favorite radical book publishers in the world. They were tabling there, showing people some of the new books they got out. They got a new book out by Lee Camp, by the way, which I can't wait to read. I got a copy of it. I got to read it this month. All right. So anyway, Bernie Sanders drew 35,000 in LA yesterday. Amy Klobuchar had to cancel an event in Minnesota due to protesters, which, by the way, Amy Klobuchar went on to drop out, and Pete Buttigieg dropped out. And what I say here, Bernie Sanders is the president we need, and he's the one we deserve. To paraphrase Batman by a little bit, you know, Batman wasn't the hero Gotham needed, but he was the one they deserve. Well, guess what? Bernie Sanders is the president we need, and he's the one we deserve. We deserve it. And when people are like, well, the American people, blah, 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 they don't deserve it. Like, no, the American people do. We really do. And I know that's kind of a hard, sometimes it's hard to get to that conclusion. When you hear things like, hey, 38% of Americans aren't buying Corona beer now because they think it's connected to the coronavirus. Which, by the way, I'm just wondering if the band The Cure is going to see an uptick in their album sales. Like, that's what I'm wondering, because The Cure is one of my favorite bands. And it might be like, oh, man, I thought I was buying something here. But yeah, when you hear stuff like that, 38% of Americans aren't buying Corona beer because they think it's connected to the virus. That makes you think, yeah, maybe it's maybe it's time that the ship known as the democratic experiment, known as the United States, it's just going to sink. Maybe it's, but you know what? When you see people showing up, and you see people showing up to events, and you see people protesting in the streets, and you see people, standing up with their unions and chasing Pete Buttigieg out of their union meeting. Keep in mind, both of the candidates that dropped out recently had humiliating events happen to them right before. Pete Buttigieg, he showed up at that Fight for 15 rally in South Carolina. He didn't march with them. He showed up later in a car and got dropped off. And I bet he had his CIA-approved lunchbox with him, too, when he got dropped off. And he showed up, and they started chanting against him. They said, Pete can't be our president. Where was 15 in South Bend? And they started chanting, Wall Street Pete. We did a video about it on this show. And he had to walk out of the rally. And as he was leaving at the rally, they still chanted at him. They chanted at him till he was gone. Amy Klobuchar, in her own home state of Minnesota, had to have an event canceled because of protesters protesting what she did as a corrupt DA, where she put a kid in jail for life over very, very suspect and faulty evidence because she had to get someone to take the blame. And who's an easy target? Who's an easier target than a black kid in America? And she knew that. So her event got canceled because those protesters showed up and they wouldn't let down. And they took over the stage and they hijacked the event. And no matter how loud they played Amy Klobuchar's playlist, which I'm sure was the most insipid of music, couldn't be stopped. And they had to shut down her event. So that happened to Pete Buttigieg. That happened to Amy Klobuchar. That means that there is power in the people. Now, I know that this is also a strategic thing. They're trying to get behind Biden to prevent Bernie from getting the nomination. I know that. But still, narcissists run for president. We all know that. You got to have at least a pinch of narcissism to run for president. At least a little bit. Some have more than others. Amy Klobuchar, more than others. Pete Buttigieg, a lot more than others. So if they still had momentum, they wouldn't be dropping out. They'd be like, no, Biden should drop out and get behind me. That's what they would say. They're dropping out because they've been humiliated. And they know they got to just go along with the game now, the establishment game, and get behind whatever candidate they think has the best chance to defeat Bernie. And right now, that guy is Joe Biden. And, you know, I think a lot of us kind of saw this coming. I think the final three, it's going to be Liz, Joe Biden, and Bernie Sanders. Warren, Biden, and Sanders. And their hope is that Warren takes votes away from Bernie, splits the, quote, progressive vote, and then Biden gets the nomination. So there is value in bringing up that Liz Warren isn't what she says she is. And a lot of shows have been doing that for a long time now, really amplifying that Liz Warren is not what she says she is. And some of those shows have been shamed for doing it. Some of oh, come on, Liz Warren's an ally to Bernie. No, she is not. No, she is not. She's not an ally to Bernie. She's not an ally to the truth either. Listen to Michael Moore's podcast. Listen to if you're still on the fence about Liz Warren, listen to Michael Moore's podcast about Liz Warren. His podcast is called Rumble. The episode is called, the title is obvious, like The Fall of Liz Warren or something like that. You'll know by the title. Listen to that podcast. Just do it. I promise you. Listen to that podcast. But nonetheless, the establishment is getting real scared. Here's something they actually tried to do in Florida, to kind of connect all the dots here. They tried to do this recently in Florida. My editor, Joe, shares this. 2 Florida Democrats sue to keep Sanders off the primary ballot. 2 filed Monday in circuit court in Leon County. The plaintiffs asked that Sanders be disqualified from the Democratic Party because he's declared an independent. The Florida Democratic Party labeled the complaint as ridiculous, and the Sanders campaign called it spurious. So there you go. At least that's the public image of the Florida Democratic primary. Publicly, they're saying that's ridiculous. Privately, well, who knows? Take your guess. We don't know. But nonetheless, that's how desperate they are. Now, this is not going to go anywhere, but they're just recycling all the old points. Hey, Bernie's not a Democrat. And now the establishment is panicking because they're saying, you guys got to get in line. We got to thin the herd. We got to get in line behind somebody. And it's going to be Joe Biden. Why? Because Amy Klobuchar just got humiliated. Because Pete Buttigieg just got humiliated. And because they got nothing. And who framed those events? Who framed that event that chased Pete Buttigieg out of a Fight for 15 event? Who framed the event that ended Amy Klobuchar's event in her own home state? We, the people, did. The protesters did. The Fight for 15 activists did. The unions did. The Black Lives Matter activists did. The people in Minnesota standing up for this kid who was wrongfully imprisoned, they did. And I know I've really been harping on this theme this episode, but that's because it's that important that we all know it's yellow vest time. It's yellow vest time whether Bernie Sanders wins or not. It's yellow vest time. Because we got to be out there in the streets and we got to be loud. Otherwise, we got no chance to turn this horse of rugged neoliberalism around. So, there's definitely some reasons to celebrate what happened. There really is. Because I think we the people ended Pete Buttigieg's campaign. We the people ended Amy Klobuchar's campaign. And yes, of course, they're uniting behind Biden to try to get Bernie away from that nomination. Of course, that's what they're doing. That was the strategy all along. But if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't be getting behind. They wouldn't be getting behind Biden. Biden would be getting behind them. So now what we got to do is we got to stay on Biden. Shout out to the Sunrise Movement, who catches Biden on camera, humiliating himself constantly. And all the other activists and journalists that have been doing that too. It's got to continue. And of course, Bloomberg is lurking in the shadows. Bloomberg's still lurking in the shadows. You know what's crazy? I had a dream that I met Tom Steyer. Like I had a dream like I met him and he wanted to know like he wanted me to ask him some questions. And I was like, well, you know, you became a billionaire exploiting the environment. Why do you want to save it now? Why all of a sudden do you want to save it? And by the way, why don't you fund a Green New Deal? Why did you run for president? Why all the money you have? Oh, look at all the money you just wasted on your dumb campaign. Oh, and some people are saying, they're like, well, it wasn't necessarily wasted. Yes, it was. He's a billionaire. If he wants to get the word out about an issue, he can freaking do it. He doesn't need to embarrass himself running for president. And no matter how much you like his dance moves, or how much you think his stupid tie looks nice, or how much he's just trying desperately to swing from Bernie's nutsack, he's still an exploitative billionaire clown. And no billionaire should ever be applauded, ever. They should be booed. They should be hissed at. You can't really hiss somebody, you know what I mean? Like, because they're the only class of people where you know they're criminals just based on the bottom line in their freaking bank account. If you're a billionaire, you're a criminal because no one makes $1 billion ethically or fairly. It ain't possible. But I think he's a nice guy. No. Just stop. So they are scared right now. The establishment is scared right now that they're not going to be able to stop Bernie. And this is their final play. Let's get everybody behind Biden. You know, Bloomberg's just kind of lurking in the shadows, doing his own oligarch thing, seeing if he can like pull off some outsider lie and grab the nomination. But otherwise, the overall plan, let's get the centrists behind Biden, hope that Warren and Bernie, that splits the progressive vote. That's what they're hoping for. But because of independent media and because of activists and because of boots on the ground, Liz Warren has been unmasked as the establishment shill that she is. And that needs to continue. Because otherwise, they're going to be able to steal this thing from Bernie. And then guess what? We get 4 more years of Trump. That's what we get. 4 more years of Trump.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and